Pleasure to be talking to you today.
Hi, Paramita. Good to see you again. Good to catch up after a while.
Wonderful. So what I want to do today, Balaji, is as part of this thought leadership series, I wanted to ask you a few series of questions. And you being the CIO of a big consumer products company, and your company has got a reach of 200 million households in India and abroad. And you are majoring in essential products on essential services on tea, coffee, water, salt, beverages, and food. And also with your vast experience on the IT side, I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts about how supply chain can be improvised to grow business revenue and profitability?
Yeah, thanks, Paramita. That's an interesting question, right? So traditionally, if you look at supply chain or operations, uh, we thought of them as back office functions bundled along with IT, nuts and bolts, trying to make sure that products are available, manufactured, procured, etc., etc. Uh, but with the changing dynamic, it's very critical to look at supply chain as a front end enabling function to make sure you're getting your products on time to meet your consumer needs. And there are 2 or 3 points that are really relevant if you look at supply chain and then technology enabling the supply chain. The first part is related to the changing objective and focus of the supply chain, putting the customer or consumer needs right at the middle, and designing your supply chain upfront. Right. So there are kind of two elements of supply chain. There's one around planning, the other one around execution. From a planning perspective, and that's where the design comes in, right? So when you design the supply chain, the design of the supply chain needs to be in terms of what you want to track from a metrics around the nice things that you said around profitability and revenue growth and margins, right? So designing the supply chain with true consumer customer metrics in mind is the first element. Secondly, once you have the consumer and customer metrics in place, it's important that we look at optimizing the end-to-end supply chain rather than optimizing parts of the supply chain. We cannot look at things like inventory, service level, order fulfillment, manufacturing cost, procurement cost, all of these in isolation. Typically within a supply chain, each one of these are different functions with their own KPIs and metrics. And traditionally, we always looked at trying to optimize one or two metrics of each of these individual functions in the hope really that once you do this individual level optimization, the whole supply chain will be optimized. But again, if you design the supply chain with the consumer and customer in mind, you will have to optimize the end-to-end supply chain. You will have to look at constraints that cut across the entire supply chain, not necessarily in one particular area. And it might happen that you have a trade-off between, say, inventory and service level. And if you're doing it separately, you might result in a lower overall optima compared with doing it together. And you might have parts of the function to say, hey, my inventory holding costs are going up, right? Because of which I'm answerable on my traditional metrics and I can't take this higher inventory cost. But if you're able to go back to the highest levels of the organization and say that while your inventory costs are going up, you're trying to hold higher inventory in one consolidated area and your overall customer metrics are really improving, then it's a case for doing it, right? So one, making sure that your metrics and how you're driving your supply chain is based on consumer centricity or customer centricity. Second, doing the whole global optimization. And the third piece, which is kind of also logically follows in, that you cannot do both of these things. You cannot do a global optimization. You cannot look at a broad base of KPIs without the data and the technology behind it. Right? So all the cliches around data is the new oil is more than kind of coming to life if you look at supply chain and optimization. So all of the techniques, all of the modern techniques and technology can then be applied to look at global optimization, to measure KPIs that are really front-facing or consumer KPIs, and to be able to drive metrics that are more lead metrics rather than lag metrics, right? So sorry, a long-winded answer, but broadly, supply chain technology is changing the supply chain to be able to drive global optima and meet consumer needs better, right? That's really where we are.
Yeah, thank you, Balaji. It's a long answer, but a very valuable answer, because what you have covered, Balaji, is, again, you're given an end-to-end direction. So if there's a company who's looking at how to make things better, you have actually given ideas of going from understanding and first of all, getting the consumer at the front and understanding the needs, and then taking it forward to understanding the needs and then designing supply chain process and how to do the optimization And at the end, you have brought in the element of the data. And that's kind of, it's a clear-cut picture. So thanks a lot. You have made it very simple and very easy to understand. Now, that brings to the next question, Balaji, on how can consumer products, product companies and retail companies leverage artificial intelligence, data analytics, and machine learning? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, again, great question, Paramita. If you look at all of those nice words that you said around data analytics, AI and ML, to me, the first word of data analytics, and I'll come back to data, right? There are a lot of things that you can do leveraging modern technology. But first of all, want to make sure that every organization is focusing on fixing the core, right? Fixing your core and the foundation, right? None of these things will work unless you've got very strong data analytics, data governance, and data quality processes, right? All of these new technologies are underpinned on the fact that you're capturing data within your organization, outside your organization, 100% near real time, right? So it's very critical that you've got core processes that are capturing 100% data, not just internal, but also external. And there's a whole host of other things like IoTs and data mining and big data and all of that that comes in here automatically. And I know it's a journey, but you can't really begin without having a roadmap for making that journey effective or productive, because otherwise you will get derailed in terms of AI and ML and data analytics. So that's one piece of getting your time. The second point around all of these new technologies is to make sure that you are framing the business problem that you're trying to solve using AI or ML. Right? This is not a case of a solution waiting for a problem, and every organization's problems are different. I would struggle to imagine an organization running 25, 30 AI ML projects. You could be doing pilots, you could be doing proof of concept, but what are 2 or 3 of the critical business problems that you really want to solve and really want to apply new technology? Right? And what are those projects that really have sponsorship top down, right? And making sure then that one, you've got data to be able to really use these techniques. Second, you're identifying the right business problems. Then the third part is around the real technology, which probably is a easier animal to manage. Technology has never ever been a challenge. Technology is something that's possible, but framing the data right, framing the business problem right, and then putting all of your either standard models or building a custom model, and that's where you get all your Python and R programmers or off-the-shelf products to do it. That's probably the easier part, right? So kind of in sequence in terms of what we're seeing around AI, ML, one, make sure that you've got the right data, you've got governance processes, you are looking at data quality. It's one thing to say that your PIN code has to be a mandatory field for a customer master, or telephone number has to be a mandatory field. And it's another thing to say that if you've got 99999, you've taken care of governance, you've got a process, you've made it mandatory, but nobody is looking at data quality, right? To give an example, there have been situations where we've tried to look at GPS coordinates of retailers or outlets that we cover. We realize that with all the modern technology, if you don't have the right address, you cannot get the GPS coordinates. And if you cannot get the GPS coordinates, things like geofencing, trying to do smart marketing, all of those things will not work because you don't have the basic data in place. Right? Now, I'm not going to dwell too much on the logistics and on the capabilities of technology. All of that is there. AI and ML will change the world, but how do you make it applicable for a specific organization? By first making sure that you've got the data. Second, defining the business problems that matter, that can make a step change. If you're not defining the business problems that can make a step change to your business, either in terms of revenue, profitability, return on investments, then you're doing yourself a great disservice by using this technology.
Yeah, again, Balaji, this is such, I mean, you, in a nutshell, you have given everything. And the way I see it, when you have said, this is so important. One, you have said that you frame the business problem and not to get deviated, derailed anywhere. One important aspect you have talked about is to frame the business problem. Second, what importantly you said is have a roadmap. Again, because otherwise with so many moving parts, what happens and the changes which keeps on happening, there is the chance of getting derailed and not have focus on what exactly is the business problem and what is the roadmap. So it's really a nice conversation that we had, Balaji, because when I look at our conversation, if somebody wants to know where to start, how in making a change and bringing in a change in supply chain, you have just given an end-to-end view. And how to leverage data, how to get started, it's right here. So I look at our conversation more like anybody can pick it up, write a white paper, or a company can just take it and make a plan out of it, and they exactly know how to move ahead. So thank you, Balaji. Your thought leadership is, I know many people are going to get benefited of it, and I thank you a lot for your time.
Yeah, you're being very generous with your compliments, Paramita. But I hope it's been of use, and it's going to be of kind of relevance in the current context. And thank you so much for your time, and it's been great having this discussion.
Thank you, Balaji.
Thank you.